Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, here to talk Seahawks football, and we're doing our first mock draft 1.0 for the off season as we lead up to the draft. This is going to be a fun show for us. We only had one rule, and I did not break it, Keith, this time. And I'm very proud of that. Our rule was we had the ability to do two trades in this draft if we so choose, and I did. And it sounds like you did too, I assume, in the draft you settled in. I did. I don't know Keith's full draft. I kind of shared mine on the one that you're going to use, and it'll be fun. I did want to talk about a couple of different scenarios because, you know, this the draft that we did, I particularly did that I'm going to use in the show is a drop back draft where I moved from 16 back a little bit to pick up a few extra picks. Keith did the same thing, but I wanted to share a draft too that also had the potential of Seahawks moving up to get a quarterback, and what that might take as far as draft capital in order for Seattle to do that. So anyway, welcome in, Keith.
Yeah. So I love these shows. Let's just jump in.
Yeah, this is fun. Well, I'll get mine out of the way really quick. The one that I didn't use for the show, but I thought was interesting in that it talks about Seattle moving up. So one of the scenarios I thought would be most likely for Seattle to move up on is not going up to 2 or 3 and getting one of the premier guys necessarily, but a draft where you would go get a player that you really liked that was going to be available to you, but maybe not there at 16. So Seattle's trade partner was Chicago in my draft. Chicago has pick number 1 overall and pick number 9 overall. And they went and got their quarterback at 1, but at 9, they had some options. Seattle wanted to move up. Chicago was a willing trade partner. So Seattle traded their 16th pick for the 9th overall pick. Chicago received the 16th pick plus a 2025 second round pick to move up 7 spots. So the nice thing about that trade for me was that I didn't have to send any additional 2024 capital in order to move up. And I don't know if that's realistic.
I don't think that gets it done. I think it would have to be the first round pick and not the second in order to do that.
So the trade was accepted anyway. I admit it'll take more draft capital, I think, to move up than that, but not too much more. But that's kind of give you an idea what would need to happen. And Seattle, in my mock draft, Caleb Williams dropped. That's not going to happen. I was going to go up and get JJ McCarthy in my draft because I think that's realistic. Potentially Drake May. I've been seeing some things around where Drake May begins to slide a little bit in the NFL draft, and he may be available in that spot as well. So you could see 4 quarterbacks go in the top 10, and Seattle gets probably one of Drake May or JJ McCarthy at 9. So that's potentially it. But that trade was interesting. And then I had another trade as well where Seattle moved back up into the second round and traded with Atlanta. Atlanta traded pick number 43 overall to us and pick number 74 overall to us for picks 78, 81, and a 2024 fourth round pick and a 2024 fifth round pick. So kind of had to trade a lot to get back up into number 43, but they got Jackson Powers Johnson, the offensive center out of Oregon, with that pick. So they got their franchise quarterback and their offensive center starter for a long time. And then later in the draft, I got Junior Colson, Jared Wiley, and Tyler Owens at safety. But I only ended up with 5 picks. So I didn't use that draft, but I wanted to share the top end of that.
And you also got rid of the second, fourth, and fifth round picks next year.
Yes.
Ouch.
No, all 2024 picks. So
no, that's what I mean. Like next. Okay, I misunderstood. I thought you said you were gonna when you traded the second one that you also gave up picks next year.
Oh, I gave up the pick, the 2025 second round pick to move up. Yeah. So all in all, you got to you got to use a lot of draft capital to move up in the draft. So I moved up twice. I did the 16 to number 9 overall, and then the pick number 78 to and 81. So 78 and 81, 119 and 151 to move up to 43. But I also got 74 as well. So kind of a pick swap there. But nonetheless, a lot of draft capital to move up into, top end of the second round to get a player. It's going to be an impact starter, but nonetheless, a lot of draft capital. So didn't really care for that draft. So didn't use it, but I did want to show a potential for moving up in the draft, because oftentimes we don't do our mock drafts where we move up because it just costs so much. And in mock draft shows, you kind of want to show how many picks you can get and talk about a bunch of players. So I think if Seattle wants to get their quarterback, though, that's what it's going to take. It's going to take serious draft capital to be able to move up, even if it's just 7 spots in the draft. It could be costly, but if you get your guy, it's worth it.
Yeah, but if McCarthy's sitting there at 9 and all it takes is next year's second, you do it. Yeah. I mean, that gives you your quarterback for a first and a second round pick.
Yes.
Yeah, do it.
Right. Right.
So that's just not even not much of a consideration. You just go for it. So
did you think about doing a move up in this mock draft at all?
I did. I never actually did it. I ended up with 2 trade back drafts, simply because I had this idea that I wanted to go and fix the rest of the roster. And I had one that I'm not going to use because it's too similar to yours, that where they did get a quarterback, but it was later. And but I'm going to use a different one where they put a lot of meat into the trenches, and I think you're going to like that one.
Nice. Yeah, interesting. So I'll go. You go first because I think you have the first overall pick.
Well, actually, I don't think. I think we're both at 25, aren't we?
Yeah, I ended up at 25. Yeah.
So I ended up at 25 here. That I did that through 2 trades. One, I traded down to 22 with the Eagles. Got pick 53 back from them, which got me into the second round, which is what I wanted.
Nice.
But I also had to give up pick 117 in order to make it work. So I basically traded back 6 spots in the first round in order to move up 2 rounds from the fourth to the second. But I like the idea of getting a pick in the second round, so that way I can get another player. There's a lot of good players in there. I didn't want to see them all goodbye. And then at 25, so that got me to 22. And then I traded down from 22 to 25 and picked up another third round pick, number 91, so which gave me 5 picks in the top 100.
Yeah, nice.
And which I felt like I needed in order to get the quality of player, enough of them
nice
in my draft.
Yeah, so I went with a little opposite approach. Is I only ended up with 3 players in the top 100. But yeah. So go ahead.
At 25, I took the guy that I think is the best defensive tackle in this draft, and that's Byron Murphy. Basically, this is a Leonard Williams style disruptor, 3-tech, just a guy that's going to be a dominant defensive lineman for you. And anytime you can grab one of those, you do it.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. I mean, he's going to be a 3-tech guy for you, right? But he can slide in a little bit. He could also slide out to play. So what do you think about his athletic profile being a duplicate on the roster? Especially if you re-sign Leonard Williams, and then you've got with the guy from Denver that we traded for.
You mean Dre Jones?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do they all kind of the similar guys?
Well, Dre Jones is a 5 tech. Williams is a 3 tech. Murphy's a 3 tech. They don't have a nose. To me, it was more, I was thinking along the lines when I did this that Leonard Williams was going to get to be too expensive and they were going to let him go and then replace him. And so it was going to be, there's still a duplicate here with him and Jerron Reed, but Jerron Reed is not the same caliber player as
and he's 31. Yeah.
As Williams. And so for me, Murphy basically taking his job made a lot more sense. And so that was kind of the idea.
Yeah, interesting. So with my 25th overall pick, I went with what I'm going to move to offensive center is Graham Barton out of Duke. Now, he played left tackle at college at Duke, but he's going to move inside in the NFL. Did a lot, took like 5 games at center at Duke in his career, but was asked to play center at the Senior Bowl. And they do that for a reason, because the NFL executives want to see him at center. And so he's going to play that spot. I think he's one of the best offensive linemen to me in this draft. And I think one of the top interior guys overall. And Seattle gets their center, I think, for many, many years to come. And I just really like that value. And I traded pick 16 to directly with Green Bay to pick 25, received second round pick number 58 overall in that trade. And so I thought that was good value to get to 58. Didn't have to give up any additional compensation to do that. And I'm really happy with the selection. I wanted to get a trench player. If I wasn't going to stick it and pick at 16, I wanted to make sure I was able to either get an interior offensive lineman or a defensive tackle out of that spot. And it was just at that range in the draft, the defensive tackle stuff on the board the value just wasn't there. And so I went with the best player on the board.
Yeah. So from that point, I believe you traded up from 58 in order to get another player. So let's go ahead and do that.
Yeah. So I found a trade partner in Minnesota. I wanted to move up. I saw an opportunity on the board. I paused my mock at 42. And there were a few different players on the board available that I was interested in, specifically at quarterback. And so I thought, I'm going to pull my trigger and get my quarterback or the future here. So traded with Minnesota. They received 58 and third round pick number 81. I received pick number 42 overall, fifth round pick number 156, and fifth round pick number 166 in return. So with 42, I selected Michael Penix Jr. Out of University of Washington at 42, which I think is going to be a great value. I could see him sliding in this range, or I could see him going in the first round, depending on how the draft falls and which teams need quarterbacks and which teams are willing to move around. But if he's there in this range and Seattle can trade for that compensation, I think that they do it. I do see them likely trying to get a quarterback in the first round, but if they wait and are patient, which is going to be really hard to do, I think he might be their guy.
So I had the draft that I did that I'm not using is kind of similar in that, but I got Murphy at defensive line again in the first round, but then I went with Bo Nix at 53, in part because Penix went at like 49. But the fact that Nix was still sitting there, I'm like, oh, that's easy, done. Got my I've got my quarterback, but I had a pick at 53 because I had moved back and gotten it in a trade back in round 1. The problem that I ran into is that I didn't really like the way the draft fell after that. There just wasn't, like, I didn't get the trench help I wanted anywhere. I got tight ends and edge players and wide receivers, and I just didn't like it. But overall, like, if the Seahawks can end up with a pick in that range because of a trade back, and one of those two guys is there, I think they kind of have to pull the trigger on it.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. My next pick's 378. What do you got?
My next pick is 53. And I went with Junior Colson out of Michigan.
Nice.
Guy that I think is going to be a very good middle linebacker, 3-4 middle linebacker, and has just all the stuff. He runs downhill well, and makes a lot of tackles. A very sure tackler. He didn't run quite as fast at the combine as I'd hoped he would, but still, I still think he's the best interior linebacker in this draft. So when he was there, and it's a huge need for Seattle, I jumped on it.
And McDonald's very familiar with him, and so is the special teams coach that came over as well, Harbaugh.
Mm-hmm.
I can totally see that pick happening, especially if we get like a Patrick Queen. I think that would help Colson just slide in right away and start as a rookie.
Yeah. Queen and Colson being the two starting middle linebackers next year, I could see that absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great pick. Am I still up, or do we both pick at 78?
We both pick at 78.
So go ahead.
So 78 fell a little weird, and the fact that I still had 81 right behind it meant that I could take a chance there, and I went ahead with tight end Jatavian Sanders out of Texas.
Nice.
Just a guy that I think offers a lot of upside and it's tight end, right? Tight ends are luxuries. But if Seattle currently has 0 on the roster, and so I thought getting one would be something that they would definitely try and do in this draft. And I just like Sanders. I think he's going to be a good pro. So I pulled the trigger there.
Yeah. No, I love that pick. I mean, I think he's probably the second ranked tight end in this draft. And easily top 3, probably the best wide receiver / tight end option, H back kind of guy. But just bigger, 6'4", 245, runs really well, high points the ball, all that stuff that you want to see out of a receiving kind of tight end. I don't know how he does blocking, but that's not going to be what they ask him to do. I don't think. I think he's going to take over that the Fant role on the roster if he's the pick, because I love that pick. I really do. I went with defense in my pick because I went offense on the first 2 picks. I went with safety Javon Bullard out of Georgia, 5'11", 195, ran a 4.47 40, 10-yard split is 1.51. He's a young player, 21 years old. Had one of the best coverage grades for safety in the draft, and force incompletion rate of 26.9 was the highest incompletion rate in college football. Kind of an Elijah Molden player, if you will. I was privileged enough to watch Elijah Molden play in high school several different times when he was at Wesleyan in Oregon. And this guy's kind of the same player. And Seattle needs a high safety, and this guy can play high safety for you. He's hybrid. He can play in the slot coverage as well, but he can play that single high and sideline to sideline speed. And he comes from a great program in Georgia. Was the championship 2022 championship game MVP. Just a real nice player. And at that point, at 78 overall, picking a safety at that, a great safety is a really good value.
Yeah, that is an outstanding value. Like, just I think he becomes a starter in Seattle.
Yeah, totally.
Like right away. Yeah. And at that point in the draft, to get a guy that you just stick in next to Julian Love and call it done, that's nice.
So I'm not picking until 119 now.
Okay, so I have 2 picks between here and there. So at 81, so I just took Sanders, right? The tight end. I came back. Part of the reason for taking Sanders there and not an offensive lineman was there were 2 that I liked, and I thought I could get away with waiting and taking whichever one fell. And I ended up with Christian Mahogany out of Boston College. 6'3", 314 guard, long arms for a guard, which I like. a guy that really is learning. His tape at the beginning of the year is not good, but he made some technique changes mid-season, and suddenly his tape in the last, like down the stretch and against really good competition, looked really, really nice. And I just think that you can see him pull out front and just destroy linebackers downfield. You can see him just mauling people. I think he's a guy that he looks like an long-term starter, but just there's still development left for him. And that's the only reason why I think he's dropping this far. And for them to get the guy that I think they could stick at left guard and just be happy with at this point, like that's where I went with that pick.
Nice. Yeah, I think he does fit in at left guard in the NFL. He played right guard almost every snap that he took at Boston College. But I think he switches just because his athletic profile, I think, fits a little bit better on the left side. I like that pick because I think he could come in and potentially compete for a starting spot, or at least be your primary backup in year one, and then eventually start for you, like similar to Haynes did in his first season. Okay, your next pick.
My next pick was at 91. This is one that I got from through a trade and stuff. So, and I ended up with Georgia safety Javon Bullard.
Yeah, same guy I got.
Yeah. Which I wanted to say, but then I'm like, nope, I'm going to wait and save it because
nice. That's great value. You got better value than I did then.
And I thought that was incredible value.
It was incredible value. Yeah.
How was he sitting there at 91? But yeah, you already talked about him. I love this guy. He's going to be a good pro. So nice. He loves to tackle. Any guys that love to tackle at safety, I'm in favor of. So you're next.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm at 119. I picked up tight end Theo Johnson out of Penn State, one of my favorite players at the position in this draft. I like a lot of different tight ends. Ben Sinnott at Cade Stover, a few others, the guy that you picked up. But Theo Johnson is super athletic and can block. So I think he's one of the best diverse tight ends in this draft. Can play the Y in line for you, can block, but he can also catch the ball really nice. 6'6", 259, 4.57, 40. So he's got pretty decent speed for that size. 1.55 split, 39.5-inch vertical, 4.19 short shuttle. So that's excellent. Daniel Jeremiah compares him to Jimmy Graham as far as his pro comp. So he's excellent size, really nice wide base, blocks really well already, can get a little better in that respect, but he's one of the best receiving tight ends.
Doesn't that make him
in the draft?
Doesn't that make him not a good comp for with Jimmy Graham? Because Graham can't block. Never could.
Well, to me that's kind of a favorable thing because I think it really does highlight his upside as far as a receiver. Now he is a willing blocker for you, so that's even better than Jimmy Graham, right? So I take the good in that he could be Jimmy Graham-esque as far as a receiving tight end, but he also can give you that value when you want to move him inside. So we don't have anybody on the roster like that. Even Will Disley, maybe Will Disley's rookie season where he kind of surprised with his athleticism and being able to receive the ball. But this goes way beyond that. So you combine like a Parkinson Noah Fant option with a guy that's actually willing to block. It gives you an opportunity to maybe only carry 2 tight ends on the roster. I don't know if you can you carry 3, but really this guy could kind of do it all for you. And so you don't necessarily need to have like a true receiving tight end on your roster. So maybe you don't re-sign Parkinson or whatever. And you just have this guy and a couple other guys. But yeah, I like it.
So my next pick is 151.
Me too.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and start then. At 151, I went project wide receiver, and took Luke McCaffrey out of Rice. This is, I mean, he's 6'2". Wait, where does 198? A guy that was a quarterback very recently and just moved to wide receiver. He's had 2 seasons as a wide receiver and improved drastically from year 1 to year 2. A lot of development left for him to do. But at that size, he is already, a decent route runner, needs to work on, getting off the line. But once he's off the line, runs clean routes, catches the ball well, as long as he's not trying to run. It's too bad that he doesn't have the size his father does, because if you remember Christian McCaffrey, who played mostly for Denver, he was like 6'5", and he was just dominant. But I think that Luke here could be a guy that's going to develop into a nice wide receiver. So to me, this late in the draft, I get a guy that can come in, be your number 4, number 5 guy right away, and develop into a nice number 3 over time.
Yeah, this guy is probably not going to be your X guy. He's not going to be your outside guy, but man, can he move? Like
he's a big slot.
He's a shifty dude. Like really shifty. His short shuttle is elite at 402. And got a decent 3-cone. Vertical is decent. They got a 1.52 split, which tells you he's very explosive in short space.
6.7 3-cones, pretty damn good. That's not just okay.
Yeah, 6.7 is 89 percentile. Yeah, no, really, really decent. Yeah, athletic. And I like it. I mean, he played at the Senior Bowl, had one of the best weeks. This is a strong wide receiver class, and you know that. This is probably the second to tackle, I think, as far as position group in this draft. And getting a guy like that at this point in the draft, 5th round, I mean, that's potentially going to be your 4th guy. And when Tyler Lockett moves on, you got to come in and be the 2nd or 3rd guy in your system is a great value pick. Plus, play special teams right away. I don't know if he can return for you, but I would have him be your return guy. I mean, the shiftiness that he displays on tape and at the Senior Bowl, I think he returned some punts at the Senior Bowl, but I'm not sure on that.
I just know that this is a guy, like, you're picking 151, right? We're not you're not getting guaranteed starters. I think this guy's got upside, lots of upside. And I think like he's also, just really smart IQ, does a good job blocking downfield. I couldn't find things not to like other than the fact that he's really raw at the position, because he was a quarterback not that long ago. I don't know, felt like a good pick, and I'm really happy with it.
Nice. I'm really happy with my pick. At 151, I chose running back Isaac Guerendo out of Louisville, 6 foot, 221 pounds, ran a 4.3, 340 at 221 pounds as a running back, 1.55 split, 41.5-inch vertical. So he's got that explosion, that 10.9 broad, fastest 40 time of any 220-pound running back since 2003 at the combine. Had a 9.98 relative athletic score, the RAS score that folks kind of see around a little bit. It combines all of your agility and time and height, weight, and gives you an athletic score up to 10.0. You had a 9.98. Finished the season with 810 yards and 11 touchdowns on 132 rushes. So not a lot of mileage on this kid. 22 receptions, 234 yards, shows some upside there in the receiving game. And then he had kick returning as well ability. But he's like got a 7.75 yards per carry average, 8 touchdowns. He had 4 games over 90 yards rushing, 161 yards, and 3 touchdown performance against USC in the Holiday Bowl. I think this guy's got serious upside, just underutilized in college. He kind of transferred a couple different times, so he didn't. That hurt him. Some players that helps. That hurt him a little bit because he just wasn't wasn't a starter after he transferred, and so he had a hard time kind of working in. But once he did, he did well. But that speed and size combo, If you can hit a home run on this guy, he could be your third guy out of the gate, replace the DJ Dallas production on your team the first year, and then find out where he's at in year two. And at that point in the draft, you're looking for the special teams and a little bit upside running the ball, and this guy's got it. So that's a fun pick for me.
Yeah,
and then I picked at 156 as well. And I assume I'm next.
You are.
And I chose an offensive guard with some upside. Trevor Keegan out of Michigan.
I laugh because he's my next pick as well.
Nice. Trevor Keegan, Michigan, 6'5", 310 pounds. He's got short arms, 32 3/8, but that's not a detraction for this guy because he kind of makes it up. And he's got familiarity with our special teams guy and coach, McDonald. And just, a solid guy that's technically sound, needs a year probably in the weight room, all that kind of stuff. He's just got some upside. I think it's a value pick at that range in the draft where you're looking for depth at that guard position. I don't know if he ever works into a starting level guy or not. Maybe you can answer that since it's your next pick. You can talk about that. But I just thought it was a good value at this spot.
Oh yeah, it is good value at that spot.
Of course.
And I can say that because I got him at 191, which is better value.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, that's great.
But but no, there are some reasons to be concerned that he may not ever develop into a starter, and they're more athletic. They're the shorter arms, and those kind of things. But this is a guy that's really smart. He's got 3 years of starting experience at Michigan. 2 of those years, they won the award for the best offensive line in college football. And he's one of the leaders in that group, just really smart and plays well and is technically sound. I think that you could do far worse, especially down in this stage of the draft where you're talking guys that a lot of these guys are quite possibly not going to make rosters at all. And for him to be there, especially in this part of the draft because this year the talent level drops off quickly once you get down here. And I thought that, wow, this is like surprisingly good talent and value in an area where I didn't like any of the other guys that were available. So I liked it.
Wow.
It was a little weird for me because this is a double up, and I got Mahogany earlier, who'd come in to be the starter. Keegan's going to come in to be a backup, but it would also give the team now 3 guards that are in their first or second year next year, and that's interesting.
Yeah,
a little
if you're
scary.
going to lose it out on Haynes not coming back and Lewis moves on.
Yeah, Haynes not coming back isn't really losing out,
right? But you're replacing guys that were on the roster last year.
Yeah,
that's good. No, I picked at 166, so you jumped me a little bit, but that's okay. So at 566, I picked 166. I picked defensive lineman Keith Randolph Jr. out of Illinois. I liked him at the combine. Moved well, 6'3.5", 296 pounds, 32 3/4 inch arms, around a 5'1", 540. Nice interior defender with good size, good length. Kind of really lacks that position at 296. I think the team would ask him to bulk up a little bit to kind of. But his short arms at 32 3/4 prevents him from being an option to play outside. So they're going to bulk him up a little bit and ask him to be either 3-tech or a 0-tech guy. But he's got that ability, strong hands, team captain, good lower half, that sort of stuff, to be able to handle a weight increase and just kind of anchor a little bit on the inside. And at that point in the draft, you're looking for some upside, and I needed a defensive lineman. I had not drafted a defensive lineman at that point in the draft, which was a cardinal sin in this draft, I think. So I went and got my guy.
Cool.
Now I'm at 194.
194, go.
Okay. So at 194, I did my wide receiver project. You did years earlier with McCaffrey. I chose Ryan Flournoy out of Southeast Missouri State, 6'1", 202 pounds, ran a 4.4 40, 153 split, 39-inch vertical, 11 foot broad. He's got the size and the physical attributes that you want at wide receiver. Good high point, the ball, coachability. He was team captain, all that kind of stuff. So just some upside. Special teams guy at that point in the draft.
Yeah. So I have one pick left at 235.
And I've got 233. So I guess I'll finish it out. Linebacker Nathaniel Watson, Mississippi State, 6'2", 233, 6'4", 6'3", 40. A little older of a prospect, but did well at the Senior Bowl, did well at the Combine. Very consistent type of player, can play multiple positions for you at linebacker. He can be an interior guy, and then he can also move around for you in space, drop back into coverage, hustle, athleticism, special teams, just that sort of a player for you. So that, to me, at 233, if you're looking for a guy that's going to stick on the roster, he's got to be a special teams guy. This guy's got really nice, classic special teams qualities that I think is going to, he's going to be your special teams ace on the team within a couple of years.
Nice. Especially that low in the draft. That's nice. So at 235, I went to a pass rusher because you can never have enough pass rushers. And I went with Xavier Thomas out of Clemson, 6'2", 244, little undersized in terms of he's not going to be a defensive end. He's going to be an outside linebacker, but doesn't run well enough to be an every down outside linebacker, meaning he's a pass rush specialist. He's a guy that's going to come in on 3rd and long and that kind of thing and get after the quarterback. Really nice first step. Strong. He got some technique stuff that he can clean up and get better. Pretty poor against the run at this point in his development. But again, he's not going to be an every down guy. He's going to be a specialist that gets, 10 to 15 snaps a game. And just has good bend, gets around the corner well. And I thought to get a guy with that much talent, there with something to work with that you can develop at this stage in the draft, I felt really good about it.
Yeah. I mean, he had, some injury things in the past that kind of kept him off the field, and he's definitely got some upside, especially with that explosion and the quick first step type stuff and the straight line speed that he had. I mean, you just take a chance on a guy at that point in the draft. That's good. So how do you think you feel like you did?
Well, actually, I like my draft. I did get a quarterback, which bugs me, but this is also my non-quarterback draft. But I like
we'll do that next time.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to plug in a bunch of guys on defense, and I got a starting defensive tackle, a starting middle linebacker, a starting safety, and a rotational guy as a pass rusher. I'm good with that. On offense, I got a tight end that I like, a guard that I like, a project wide receiver, and a backup guard. Not as much there, but really my goal coming into this was to get trench guys and defensive guys. And I thought it went pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. I think you did a great job on that. I really liked mine as far as just moving around, getting value, getting my quarterback, ending up, I think, with 4 starters out of the draft. I got Graham Barton to start at center. I got Michael Penix to potentially compete to start at quarterback in year 1. Definitely the starter in year 2, a forward, and to have that future starting quarterback on your roster at this point is good. I'm worried a little bit about him as far as his knees, his shoulders, and his age. But at that point, at 42, you take your shot, you take your chance. Michael Penix is there. I don't feel bad about that at all. Javon Bullard at safety, your free safety to replace Quandre Diggs on the roster. And then Theo Johnson can be your Noah Fant, Will Disley combo tight end for you. on the team, and then a running back that I really like that has potential to be a 3-down back in this league, Isaac Guerrero from Louisville. I think he's a name to pay attention to at the running back spot in the draft, and it'd be interesting to see. They're going to draft a running back. I mean, I know that Seattle, you don't want them to draft a running back early, and they won't, but in the 5th round or later, you might see a guy because they want to replace Dallas and his. Now they have a kid on the roster that didn't play much. Yeah, that didn't play much last year. That could potentially take some of those snaps, but you always want a 4th guy around the roster that's got some potential. So,
well, and Guerrero is that's a nice upside pick, and you're picking late enough there. That's like a pick and stash, and you running backs. You don't have your running back room make it through a season without an injury, right? Somebody gets hurt, somebody gets banged up. You need depth. You've got to have it, and this gives the Seahawks that 3rd one. So if one of their 2 big guys gets hurt, they still got a backup running back that can come in and spell Walker or Charbonnet. So I like that pick. I know that the Seahawks fans will hate it, but I like it.
The fascinating thing for me is going to be the quarterback spot this year in this draft. It seems like Seattle has been saying things about Geno Smith that have been fairly non-committal. Yeah, you're on the roster, but we'll see. And when you hear statements like that out of not only your coach but your GM, they're bringing in somebody that's going to compete. I don't care who it is. I don't know if they're going to block that shot, or I don't know, but I think it's going to be a draft pick. And to me, that almost says that Mike Macdonald has identified a quarterback that he'd like to build his franchise around, and they're going to go get him. And or at least they're going to do their very best to get in a spot where they can do that. And whether that's moving up or sticking or dropping back or whatever, to have Geno on the roster for a season as an insurance policy while getting your guy in the draft, I think is a great way to go about getting a quarterback on your roster. And I don't see Seattle passing on that opportunity this year. It's just, there's too many guys available, and they have the ability to move around a little bit in the draft. I think this is the year they finally get a guy. So it'll be curious to me if it's McCarthy, if it's Penix, if it's Bo Nix, if Drake May drops. Keith, I'm hearing some things about Drake May dropping potentially, not past 15, but or 16, but Seattle could be in play there if they really like Drake May.
There's no way. Like, I know we're hearing things, but who's leaking these things?
Right.
The Seahawks may be leaking these things, trying to get him to drop. This could be the whole Dan Marino cocaine thing, so that he dropped far enough so Miami could draft him. It turned out to all be fake. Like,
you just never know.
Go look at his tape. Go look at his everything. There's not there. Unless he just interviewed terribly, there's no reason for Drake May to fall.
I understand he interviewed well. He's a really competent guy. He's got a nice little Southern drawl, but other than the Southern drawl, he's everything that you would want in a quarterback, as far as being competent, as far as making good decision making, as far as it knocking out the interviews in front of a camera. Being the face of your franchise, all that kind of stuff. So I agree. I mean,
it just makes no sense to me. Like,
there are deficiencies though. And so you kind of have to weigh those out. And then you look at the opposite end of the spectrum. McCarthy is solidifying his stock and really had an okay workout at the combine. It wasn't spectacular, but he's got everything. He's got all the other intangible things that you want out of your franchise guy. And so McCarthy seems to be moving up. Drake May seems to be dropping a little bit. To me, these things are already locked as far as at this point in the draft, 1 through 15 or so. The quarterbacks, as far as where they rank, how teams view them, and so forth. I don't know how that's going to shake out. I would imagine that Seattle knows exactly what it needs to do to get whichever player they have identified. And so it's going to be fascinating to me whether that means they need to move all the way up to 3 or whether they can move around between, say, 10 and 5. I don't know, Keith. It's so going to be a surprise to me no matter what happens, I think. How about you? How do you feel about the quarterbacks and what you think Seattle thinks of this draft class?
Well, I think they've got to love this draft class. This is such a good draft class. I guess I'm higher on Drake May than some people because I think he's like Caleb Williams has the great tape and all of that, but he's kind of small, and I'm a little worried about durability long term. Drake May, I don't have that concern. Drake May has also played with crap talent around him, where he's getting where he's running for his life on every play. So people talk about deficiencies. I'm like, to me, I see less deficiencies there than I see on guys like McCarthy, who had, essentially perfect blocking pocket for him on every play. And it's like, well, how does he play when he has to move, when he's off his spot, when he's got a guy in his face as soon as he gets the ball? I know what Drake May can do in those situations because you see it in every freaking game, and he wins most of those situations. So if he falls and Seattle gets him, you're good. He's stellar. I like McCarthy. I think Jaden Daniels has a great highlight reel, but the rest of his tape that doesn't show up on the highlight reel is iffy, and I'm wondering why people view him as high as they do. I mean, yeah, it's just things like that. Like my take on the quarterback class is a little bit different than everyone, but if the Seahawks can sit at 16 and wait and then see who falls, and if there's you picked moving up to 9 in your move up draft in order to get a person. If McCarthy or May fall to 9, I have a hard time believing they don't make that move and go get him.
Yeah, well, because the Jets are at 10.
Broncos are at 12.
Broncos are at 12, and
Minnesota at 11.
Minnesota's at 11, and then you've got New Orleans sitting there, and even the Raiders at 13. All teams that could potentially take quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So you're going to have, if you wanted one and ensure that you have the one that you want, you're going to have to move up. Yeah. So to me, Chicago at 9 seems to make sense. You could potentially move up to Atlanta at 8, or even Tennessee at 7.
I don't know.
I mean, it's going to take a lot to move up too.
Atlanta sitting at 8 is part of the reason why I'm hesitant, because if one of those top 4 drops, I think Atlanta takes them. So I think you have to get up, at least trade with Atlanta, so that way they can't take your quarterback, or get up in front of them. And that's
a team that you could potentially move up to is the Chargers at 5, or New York Giants at 6. I just think the draft capital to move from 16 to 5 or 6 is going to be 2 first-round picks.
Yeah, you're going to have to do this year's first-round pick and next year's first-round pick, and then maybe
some probably
one of your 2, like 81 in this draft.
Yeah, and potentially even more than that. I don't know. It could be a premium. It could be a value. You just don't know until you do it. But if Seattle was going to move, would you show your hand early, or would you do a draft day trade?
If you're moving up to 5,
the 49ers moved up a week before the draft, and so everyone knew what they were going to do.
True, but they also moved up to 3, and you knew who was going 1 and 2. If you're going to move up to 5 and you're going to give up all of the capital to get up to 5, what if Atlanta then turns around and moves up to 4 to get in front of you, right? So now you've got 4 quarterback needy teams in the top 4, and you're sitting at 5. I don't think if 5's where they go, I think it's a draft day trade. But I think it's they've got framework set up on what it's going to take. And then they just, if a guy drops to that spot, they're already on the phone. All right, just send it in. What we already agreed on, and then bump up and do it. But I don't think you make the trade until draft day, because you need the guy's got to be there. Or why did you trade?
Is there an argument to be made to stick and pick or trade back and be patient and allow the draft to come to you, and maybe you move
Always.
up into the second round like I did at 42, or like you did in your draft at 53, and choose one of Nick's or Penix?
I mean, yes. I'm also not convinced that they're going to be there.
I'm not either.
We just went through the quarterback needy teams, right? The top 3, 8, and then 10, Broncos, 11, 12, 13, right? And 16. There's so many quarterback needy teams. I'm not convinced that, despite the fact that those guys will have a second round grade, you may have to take them in the top 20, if you want one, just because everybody needs, like,
so if Seattle stayed at 16 and picked one of Nick's or Penix, you would be okay?
I mean, sure. I would sit there and look at Byron Murphy still on and cry a little bit, shed a tear, a single one right here. But I mean, if Schneider believes in one of those guys, his track record on picking quarterbacks has been pretty damn good. So I think that you're gonna have to trust him. I really wish they could go get, Drake Mayer or JJ McCarthy, but if you can't, you can't.
All right. I'm sure that's, we'll probably do a couple more mocks before the draft, I'm sure. And we'll have an opportunity to kind of reevaluate what we do. So, okay. So coming up this week, I think we're going to do some obvious free agency talk. We'll pass along any rumors or signings or moves that Seattle makes. Free agency starts officially, I think, on Wednesday, right, Keith?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I a week early? I can't remember.
I think you're right. It starts soon.
Okay. I haven't looked at the dates recently, so I'm sorry for that. I think it does start this week. So legal tampering can start like tomorrow. So we start hearing some news right away, and then we'll keep going on our draft prospect series as well on the defensive side with defensive tackles, then defensive ends.
Wednesday, March 13th.
Okay. Linebacker, safety, corners, all that stuff coming up. Mm-hmm. And fun time of the year. All right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast on your favorite podcast platforms or YouTube, and subscribe when you find us. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.